Hello, welcome back to another edition of the I'm Always Right Sports Podcast. I am your host, as always, the mouth of Michigan, Robin Dyker. With me, as always, my co-host, the Mercso, Mike Merkel.
I'm here.
He's here, ready to go. Kyle, the whaleman, missing in action once again. That's slacker. But we're gonna go on without him. I don't think he can contribute much right now.
No, give it 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
When Michigan starts playing,
right.
and then maybe he'll show up.
Yeah, exactly. Then we'll definitely be ready to go. Episode 100, right around the corner. Episode 98, we are on, Mike. I can feel it. The tension's building. Got some big stuff planned for episode 100, so I'm really excited for that. But let's just jump right in here. First topic of the day. We're going to talk Lions. I promised it last week, so we got to get to it, unfortunately. We talked last week before we obviously film the show on Sundays before any NFL games happen. We said basically this conversation was either going to be somewhat like looking at it like, okay, because they'd be 2-2, or all right, they're 1-3, and they're 1-3, right? They blow a 14-point lead to New Orleans. They've had a lead in the last 11 games. They've blown 10 of them. It's been a disaster of a start, quite frankly. And not so much the aspect that they're 1-3. I think we could have easily said at the beginning of this year, before anything happened, that they could be 1-3, and maybe you wouldn't feel terrible about their chances just based off of how they may have looked. But they've looked terrible. And that's the problem that we're looking at right now. So, Mike, just talk to me about what you're seeing, because for me, I did a lot of trying to convince myself that this defense was going to be better. I did a lot of thinking, all right, if it's going to happen, now is the time to happen. And there's some things I want to get into. I want to get into all this resurgence for Jim Caldwell for a second as well. I want to get into what we think the future of this team is. But just talk to me about what you're seeing from this team, or what you're not seeing out of this team, because I do think it's primarily the defense, but I don't think the offense is necessarily not to blame as well for the way that they've played starting off this year.
Yeah, both sides have been...
It's been rough. Jack Fox has been their best player, their punter. Low-key. Him and probably Jonah Jackson and Frank Ragnow, the center, and then the rookie guard from Ohio State have been probably the three best players on this team.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Galladay coming back in 3-4.
Yeah, he's been helping. He's been
the best player through those 2-game stretch, probably, and they missed the first 2 weeks. I think the real problem is on the defensive side. I think the offense has been pretty bad also. They have not been helping their cause in the slightest. But their defense, I think the problem is they don't have anything that they're an expertise in on the defensive side. All the good, at least
they don't have any athletes.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah, all the good teams. Yeah. I'm just saying the good teams, not the Chiefs and the Ravens and the top tier teams. The good teams have one of the three sections that
somewhat built out,
very good in, and everything else are all right. We're serviceable, and everything else. That's what makes you good at that point. On the defensive side, the problem with the Lions is that they don't have a pass rush. Their linebackers are unathletic and
they're slow.
Can't cover anybody. Yeah. And then the secondary, who I thought would be the best by far this year, has been slacking and underproducing. And so with that, I'm like...
Well, and I'm going to give the secondary a little bit of a pass, just a little bit, not a lot, but just a little bit. I mean, you lose Trufant and Coleman. Coleman hasn't played since the half of week 1. You lose Trufant, and he got hurt again already, right? And that was the big concern going into the season, is can he stay healthy? Clearly not so much, right? So you forced Okudah now, who we've seen flashes of good things from, but overall has looked rough, to say the very least. Owarie's looked meh. Gerald Roberts has looked meh, right? I think the secondary is put into a position where they're out on an island in a lot of regards, right? That third down play right before the next third down with the Saints closed it out, where it was a crossing route to Emmanuel Sanders for a 3rd and 6 on Okudah. And I go, if you'd have just played zone there, instead of Okudah having to chase the guy, and you just had somebody drop back into coverage, oh, look at that. He's not wide-ass open anymore. And so it is the inability for this team to, quote-unquote, not be the smartest people in the room, oh, no, the scheme's going to work. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for 3 years, and now you're looking at this team and you go, you're bottom, I think you're 30th against the pass, you're not 30th against the pass, but I think you're 30th in total scoring, you're 30th against the run, and I think you're 18th against the pass, which is a miracle, because, and you know why you're probably 18th against the pass? Because everyone's running the ball right down your damn throats. So it's there's nothing good, there's nothing salvageable right now about this defense. You know what I mean? And it's very frustrating because you looked at it and you go, okay, this was supposed to be the time. This was supposed to be the time where we were going to finally see what this whole picture is going to look like. And right now, it looks like garbage. I want to talk about the offense now, too. I don't think Matt Stafford has played particularly well over these first 4 weeks, right? I think I've seen flashes of what he's looked like. I've seen, the throw against Chicago to DeAndre Swift. That was a laser, right? That wins the game if he just catches the mother. Oh, I don't want to swear on this show. We try to make this family friendly, but you know what I mean. Like there are certain things about it. You look at his stat line and you go, okay, he's got 9 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. That's not a terrible stat line for a normal. You know what I mean? Like I don't look at that and I go, wow, that's crazy terrible, right? His passing numbers, he's over 1,000 yards, I think. His completion percentage, I think, is right around 60%. I could be a little bit off on that. But point being is that number-wise, it doesn't look terrible. But you can see the throws. You got his stats right now, don't you? That was the stats right now?
I gotta do some math on it.
Oh, okay. So 60%, right? Exactly. So he's completing 60% of his passes. He's got a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He's got over 1,000 yards passing over the quarter. He's on pace to throw for 36 touchdowns, and you know what I mean? So all the numbers look fine. The completion percentage obviously could be higher, but you're looking at it and you go, that throw to Hawkinson in the end zone, he underthrows it by 3 yards, and you go, dude, that can't happen. He's missing throws. The throw to Jesse James, and Jesse James just came down with him. Like, what? Why? Mm-hmm. Why is that the decision? I feel like he's nervous back there, or he's trying to. I don't know if it's and maybe this is just the homer in me because I'm a Stafford guy, but I feel like he's trying to do too much. I feel like he's forcing it, and he's forcing the issue to another level that I haven't seen him do before, and it's not working. Like I feel like they're not doing things. Like last year, you saw there was people open last year. You know what I mean? You look at going back and looking, I'm just talking about the Saints game in particular, just because I did some film study on this. And you got 4 Lions receivers, and there's 2 in the same spots outside the sticks, outside the hashes, and there's nobody in the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. And you're wondering where these windows are, and I'm like, geez. So it's like the play calling's not helping him, but he has not played well. And I think that for somebody like me, who has been a pretty big Stafford defender over the years, to come out and say that he has not looked good in these first 4 weeks is telling, because he doesn't look right. You're the resident quarterback of the group here. What are you seeing out of him? Because I just don't think he is confident that I feel like they're in the mindset of we have to put up 40 or there's no way we win football games right now. And I feel like they're pressing so hard on some of these throws. He's making decisions that I don't know where they're coming from anymore.
Yeah. I think the problem that you see in him is, one, I think he is trying to do too much, but I think, 2, I think the play calling has helped, you said, but I think it hinders because they go up by so much so early,
and then they let off.
Yeah, and they let off, and the second you let off, you can't go back on at the same pace. No. Where I think when you saw previous teams, even like the Caldwell teams, they never started strong, but they always got into rhythm in the 3rd and 4th quarter, which could help them come back to win games. That's why he had.
Well, that's what they did against Arizona. They didn't start out on this blazing fast start against Arizona. Yeah. It was a close game throughout. The defense played relatively well. I'm going to put that in big air quotes because they still didn't play good, but they created turnovers. That's the difference. But the offense did enough where it was like, we're just going to keep the same kind of pace. Big 3rd down conversions, and a big drive at the end when they needed it to win the game. Yeah. Where you see it where it's like they had a chance to win that Saints game last week if they didn't just go, all right, we're going to go run, pass. I go, when you're always in 3rd and 7, it's pretty hard for you to consistently convert that, And I know Adrian Peterson has been a pleasant surprise at times, but at the same time, Adrian Peterson is not the solution to your running back problems. Let's be honest with ourselves. So there's some confusing personnel groupings. Will Harris getting majority of snaps the first 2 weeks over Tracy Walker is beyond maddening, right? This coaching staff, and by result, this entire hierarchy that the Lions have right now is not putting them in the best position to win football games right now. And at the end of the day, I think that has been their number one factor. Is I think that Patricia, and to an extension Bob Quinn, I think should be accused of trying to be the quote unquote smartest man in the room. Mm-hmm. Like, I know better. I know this. I made that call in the Super Bowl to win that game. I go, really? Because if they just run it up the gut, they probably win the game. Mm-hmm. So we're not talking about that right now. And to say these things that they're coming out with, well, there's a lot of work to be done. Okay, great. Yeah, there may have been work to be done, but you've not even come close to what we were, right? Which leads me to this Caldwell talk. I want to talk about this real fast because I think there's a bit of a misconception going around Detroit right now that I think needs to be cleared up. Jim Caldwell, right, was a good, above average coach for the Detroit Lions, right? Historically, he's one of the best coaches we've ever had, okay? No doubt about that. However, that is not the reason why Jim Caldwell was fired, okay? Let's look at the context of, let's not look at what's happened. Let's look at the context of when he was fired. He was fired because they said, quote unquote, 9-7 wasn't good enough, which means that they could say, hey, we have a roster built that is going 9-7 that sometimes squeaks into the playoffs, right? And then gets absolutely axe murdered usually in the playoffs, right? We saw that in the Seattle year, right, where they looked completely like they didn't belong in that game, right? So by de facto, letting Jim Caldwell go was the Lions organization doing something they'd never done, where they said 9-7 is not good enough. We are trying to win a championship. Okay. Now, I will then say I'm not going to fault the organization because they fired Jim Caldwell because they're trying to win a championship because they did not feel that Jim Caldwell was able to get there to the Super Bowl. That is what we're all about here, guys, is that we're trying to get to a Super Bowl. However, I can then also say that they hired the wrong guy. And I think, Mike, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I think that's where the sentiment lies. It's not so much the fact, I think people are looking at the Jim Caldwell era with rose-colored glasses because they were above competent, right? But they weren't winning the games that were going to get us to where Green Bay is, where Seattle is, where San Francisco is, right? So I'm not mad at the organization for firing Jim Caldwell and attempting to get to somewhere further than that, to get to a Super Bowl, but then I can also say that it didn't work, and that they need to start over, and that they need to get somebody else in here because clearly this is not working. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I said that like 2-3 weeks ago, where I think you were in a position where you could either be 9-7 every single year,
right,
or you can fire him and take the 50-50 shot of going 13-3 or 5-12 or whatever the next 3 years, and you flip the coin and it just came up the wrong end where you're just on the wrong side of it and you're going 5-7.
Correct.
It'd be a bunch, this would be a different conversation if Matt Patricia was succeeding and we were 11-5, 12-4 in the last 3 years.
And now it's why can't we get over the hump?
Yeah, and then it was not even that, if we even won playoff games or whatever, and it's like, wow, Jim Caldwell was that bad. Like, now we're looking at like Jim Caldwell was good because you're here below him, but if we were above him, then you go, yeah, Jim Caldwell really was.
Yeah, it was a really great decision to let him go. Like, that's why I guess that's my point, though, right? Is that we can't look back and go, wow, like, it's like saying, wow, Wayne Fontes was a great coach. Wayne Fontes was not a great coach. He just had a good team underneath him. You know what I mean? Like, there's things about it where you just go, you can't do that. You can't go back in hindsight and say, well, if we had Jim Caldwell, we'd be better. We probably would be better. No doubt about it. We'd be 9-7. We'd be 8-8, and if we would be making the playoffs, we'd be getting killed by Seattle. We'd be getting killed by Green Bay again. We'd be losing the big games that you're supposed to win when you're supposed to be a good team. The Lions were an above-average team, and I know for Detroit, it's one of those things where the Lions have been so bad for so long, I think people are just like, we're not the worst. But if you're the Lions organization, you have to take the chance to say, hey, we're building something. Let's go now. And it's like, hey, this guy got us here. Now we need to go and we need to take the next step. And we need to try to get to the point where we can have a successful coach like a Doug Peterson or a Pete Carroll or an Andy Reid. We need to go find our guy like that so we can make this run while we still have a quarterback who can potentially get us to that point. Right? It's the two things you need. You need some sort of relevant good coach, and you need a quarterback to win this league. It's a fact. So I'm not going to ding the organization for firing Jim Caldwell with the mandate that we can be better and we're going to get better. It's the fact that, okay, now that we've regressed, I can say they hired the wrong guy and they need to get him out. You know what I mean? I just thought they needed to be addressed because I think Lions fans in a lot of regards are like, they're looking at that time. They're like, oh God, remember that year we went 9-7? I go, yeah, we went 9-7 with 7 fourth quarter comebacks. You know what I mean? Like, some of that, there's a regression to the mean there. There's something that you can't reproduce that all the time. So, as much as I want Patricia to be gone, and I think he will be, I don't expect him to be fired in the middle of the season. If he does, it's probably if they lose to, like, Jacksonville, the Giants, and, like, if this team completely tanks out and we go 1-15 or something crazy, then I think he'll be fired before then. But I anticipate he'll be fired at the end of the year, along with Bob Quinn, because that's where... You know, you can't hire anybody now anyway, right? So, like, there's that. And if he does get fired, which he should, then we'll talk coaching hires and all that stuff at that point. I don't need to go down that road just yet. So, that's where the status of this team is. The sad part is, with the way this schedule's looking, Mike, you could be looking and they could be 3-3 after 2 more weeks. And that's where this schedule is at right now. They don't play anybody worth a damn until they probably play, I'll say, maybe Carolina? On their schedule?
Well, they play the Colts in 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, okay, so right. So who do they play next?
They got
Jacksonville and Atlanta. Those are both bad football teams. Yep. They play the Colts. That could be a loss for sure. And at Minnesota, that could be a loss. But then you play Washington. Washington's not good. Carolina's, I think, average. Houston's terrible right now. Chicago is playing well, but I don't think they're legit. I think you can beat Chicago. Mm-hmm. And then you play Green Bay. That's probably an L. Tennessee's good. Tampa's good. Like... There's some opportunity here where they could easily be 7-9, I think, and you go if you really try to play it out that way. So, but once again, the mandate is playoffs or bust, and they're not going to make the playoffs. At 1-3, it ain't happening. Like if has to be so many things to go right, even with a crappy NFC, I don't see it happening. So that's where they're at right now. So you want to see the status of the Lions? That's where they're at. They're a bad football team with their best players not playing very well. That's the reality of it. We went into the season thinking the defense just needed to be above awful, and they're not even above awful, and this offense needed to be top 10. That's where they needed to be in order to be successful this year, and neither is happening. They're not scoring in the red zone. They're not keeping people out of the end zone. They're not doing anything really all that well right now. Let's be honest with ourselves. So until that changes, which I don't think it will under this current regime, it is what it is, and we're going to be looking to next year, and hopefully they don't do anything too stupid until then. That's really the goal. Yeah, all right, let's talk wings here now. We got a lot of stuff to go over this week, guys. We're going to talk some wings here in a second, then we're also going to be talking some ALCS and NLCS action as well, and some storylines going into that, and obviously we got NXT Takeover to talk about as well. But let's talk about the Red Wings here. Free agency just opened up. We had the draft. I'm not going to get into the Red Wings draft. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think a lot of people know who a lot of these guys are when they get drafted. They don't see it's not like we got Sidney Crosby coming in the door right now. You know what I mean? We don't have a Connor McDavid. The Wings didn't have the first overall pick like they should have anyway. But the Wings have come out and made a lot of moves for free agency, right? I think the biggest one is probably Bobby Ryan from Ottawa, the Senators, right? He's a veteran guy coming in on a 1-year deal. There's been a lot of these short-term 1-2 year deals, Mike, and a lot of people in Detroit and in the hockey world are really excited about what Stevie Y is doing. Talk to me, Mike, about what you're thinking about what this team is going to look like here this upcoming season and for the next couple years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have some optimism going in that they're not going to be the worst team by a long shot in hockey, at least. I think they'll still not be a good team, but you're adding a lot of good veteran leadership to this team. Mm-hmm. You're getting another, you just added a goalie to your team. You got a couple good defensemen to your team. Yep. So I think the team will be improved from last year, and I think that the best case scenario that you can look into it is either one, that these players can just... You can't ball out in hockey. Puck out in hockey. They can puck out for you guys. And for the Red Wings, or if they're good enough, you can flip them for picks. So I think it's either you play well and you keep them for the 1 or 2 year deal, or they play good, or they play above where you think they're going to play, and then you flip them, you get, here's a second round pick, here's a third round pick, and you can take those extra shots at the dartboard. Yep. Hopefully you can get a third round pick that's like, that's next Sidney Crosby in the third round or something. You look at it, they signed Thomas Grace, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, from New York.
He's going to compete with Bernier for the goalie spot. They've got 2 guys under contract right now in the goaltending spot for under $6.6 million, where if you're paying a top-tier goalie, you're probably paying that for one guy. So they're doing some things really well with their salary cap. They signed Troy Stecker from the Canucks. He's a defenseman there for 2 years as well. You're going to have 10 for unrestricted free agents next year, possibly, for the Wings, right? So lots of cap flexibility. They've still left enough cap available right now where they can either go and sign maybe a bigger name, or they can then take on maybe, quote-unquote, maybe a bad contract or two, where basically you're buying a pick, right? So you look at this team and you go, all right, there's some things about it where, like you said, Mike, they're either going to make a solid kind of core where it's like, okay, we're going to use these guys to build up where the young guys are going to get to, or B, they're going to play just well enough where we're going to flip these guys quickly to get more assets, right, and to get more picks to allow the cap space to be a thing, because at the end of the day, that's the reality of it, right? And I'm reading a tweet here, I think it's perfect. The ultimate success of Yzerman's moves today or the last couple days should be judged at the 2021 and 22 trade deadlines. High potential for flipping guys that you just signed, and the Wings are going to try and take advantage of that, right? Where I think Yzerman is doing such a great job of getting guys here, because honestly, if you're a free agent, right, of any sort of relative level of competence, you're not going to Detroit. Like, let's be real, right? You're coming off a 17-win year. There's no high confidence level if you're a guy coming here, right? But at the same time, when you got Steve Yzerman calling you to say, listen, hey, here's what the plan is, right? And here's what we're trying to accomplish. And when you're calling guys like Dylan Larkin, like Bobby Ryan called Dylan Larkin, was like, hey, are you guys like competent with losing? Like, are you guys okay with losing? Because he's like he said, some teams, right, when you lose as much as the Wings have, teams just get used to it. And you're just kind of like, okay, this is what it is, right? Yeah. And Larkin said, I wouldn't be calling you right now, and I wouldn't be talking to you if that was the case, right? And it's like, there's nobody in this locker room right now. And he's like, they would have fired the coach already if that's what happened, right? And so, I still think he's going to get fired at some point. But point being is that you're looking at this team, and if there is some sort of optimism, right, it's the fact that there's clearly a plan. Yzerman has a very unique plan for what's going on with this, right? These signings aren't coming out of nowhere. They're not going out and blowing the wad in free agency. It's the first time they've had any real cap room in a long time. They're getting rid of guys, right? They're getting rid of, who did they just get rid of? They got rid of Erickson. They got rid of some of these other guys where they're just kind of hanging around. So they're reshuffling this roster. They're getting out of some bad contracts, and they're really starting to, I think, now you're going to start to slowly but surely see as these free agencies and these trade deadlines come across, you're going to see the plan. And if you want to look at what that plan looks like at the end, look at Tampa Bay. Because that's at the end of the day, that's Yzerman's work for the most part, right? So that's the goal at the end of this, is that if we look like Tampa Bay does in 5 years from now, everyone's gonna be like, man, remember we were terrible, but now look at, right? Like we're back and we're rolling, right? So you gotta have confidence in the plan. We're only really in phase 1 of this plan, quite frankly, right? He's only been here for a couple drafts, so it's like you gotta give it some time. But I think as we continue to grow here, I think you're gonna see a better Red Wings team than we have in the last couple of years. Long story short. So I'm really excited for that, and if you're a Red Wings fan, you should be as well. All right, after the break, we're going to talk some baseball action, ALCS, NLCS Championship Series. The Yankees are out. You suck still, no matter how much money you pay. And then we're also going to be talking some NXT Takeover as well in Part 2. Really looking forward to it. Stick around. And welcome back to Part 2 of Episode 98 here, the I'm Always Right Sports Podcast. Let's jump right in here, Mike. Let's talk some baseball action here, man. We haven't talked a lot of baseball since the Tigers season ended, for good reason. I mean, what's really the thought there, right? But we got the Houston Astros versus the Tampa Bay Rays, and we've got the Atlanta Braves versus the LA Dodgers, right? So there's a couple things I want to talk about here, give every team a little bit of spotlight. First off, big hats off to the Tampa Bay Rays. Coming back, knocking off the Yankees, the powerhouse. Everybody thought that you might as well put the ring already on their finger. They got everybody. Name a guy who's probably on the Yankees right now of any sort of relevance. And they knock him out again I mean, it feels like it's been a long time since the Yankees been in the World Series, and that's a great feeling for everybody involved. So I'm glad they knocked those guys off. They're playing the Astros. We talked about the scandal and the cheating and this and that and everything else, but they're right back here again in the ALCS, right? I mean, talk to me like if the Astros somehow get back to the World Series, right? Does that kind of put any kind of damper on the people like, well, you cheated and you don't deserve to be cheated? Like, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but at the same time, they're doing it again, and this is still a very good baseball team. And you're missing Justin Verlander too, by the way.
Yeah, I'm like mixed on it only because of one, the season that they had to do with the 60 games. It's kind of like, I mean, they won 29 games and you're making the playoffs. Like, I'm like, that's kind of pushing it. And two, I don't think they would have made the playoffs. Yeah, they're the last team to make the playoffs. Yeah. And since they expanded it, that's the only reason they're in it. Right. As they're the 8-seeded team in there. So I kind of look at that and I'm like, man, like, I'm like, good for them. Like, maybe they are showing, I mean, they're doing with what they got, and without Verlander, they're really pushing towards, and I think they have a really good chance of making the World Series, but this Tampa Bay team is very, very good, so I don't know if they're going to be able to get through them, but, man, it's just been, I don't think it would redeem anything because of how the season, how it's been. Got there. Yeah, 60 wins as the 8 seed, just sneaking in and kind of upsetting people. I just don't look at it like
I think it's very interesting because I do think that a lot of Houston Astros fans would be honestly like if we were talking about the Lions in part 1. If the Lions got caught cheating after they won a Super Bowl, guess how many cares I would have? 0. Like, no offense, but like I wouldn't care. I'd be like, whatever, they got it. But especially now that they're getting back there, especially if we see a Dodgers Astros rematch somehow, I think that would be. Like, I don't want to say best case scenario because I personally would like to see a Braves just because it's like name 2 random teams and put them in the World Series because I think that'd be funny. But if we do see a Dodgers Astros rematch again, I'd be very interested to see how that series plays out because of the amount of tension, the heat that is involved with that kind of matchup, right? I think it would be, for the fact that sports in general, ratings are down and stuff like that. I think that's probably the one matchup that people would go, oh, all right, we get to see it again, Yeah. Speaking of the Dodgers, though, they're no stranger to this area, right, of the playoffs. They've been in the World Series a couple times. They keep choking it away every year. Clayton Kershaw's still looking for that first championship. I mean, is this kind of a make-or-break time? I mean, I know we're in a weird season, and this is kind of it's a shortened season, I guess the best way. But I don't know, there's no real good adjective to describe, but it's been weird, right? Mm-hmm. But is this the year that finally the Dodgers kind of get over the hump and get there?
I think there's a very strong possibility. I think with the not having to play 162, only having to play 60, everyone's way more fresh and ready to go for this playoff run. Absolutely. And you've seen it as people have had like no hitters through this playoff run and stuff because they haven't had to play 40 games before this. They've only had to play 8 games before this. Right.
LA has not lost a game in this playoffs. They swept the Brewers 2-0, and then they swept San Diego 3-0. Yeah. So they haven't lost a game.
So they're hot.
And neither has Atlanta, by the way.
I was going to say the Braves have also been very hot though. Yeah. They've gone through their
they beat Cincinnati in the wild card, and then they beat the Marlins 3-0 as well. So both of these teams have not lost since the playoffs started.
Yeah. So I think that's the series to watch if you're going to watch one. I think the Astros Rays could go one way very hard on either way. But I think, I would put money that the Dodgers would win, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people might think it would be. I think people are going to be like, oh, it's the Dodgers, so they're probably going to sweep, game it, but I think the Braves are good. So
and if you're a Tigers fan, I think the Braves are the best team to be looking at because the Braves just even a few years ago, right, were not a very good baseball team, and now look where they're at. They're in the NLCS. They're fighting for a World Series position, and this is kind of the rebuild that you're kind of hoping to have if you're a Tigers fan, right? Is that you tank long enough where you hit on a couple picks, you're young enough where you get there, you're able then, once you have your core of these younger guys that you can rely upon, is then you go out and you go grab a number 1 guy here. We're going to go grab this guy here. We're going to grab a Dallas Keuchel or this guy or that guy or whoever, that they, that they've tried or they did have at one point or whatever like that. Like, same thing with the Astros, quite frankly, or the Cubs, The Cubs, all right, we've got a good core of guys here right now. We're going to go get Aroldis Chapman for this playoff run, right? We're going to go name a guy here. We're going to go get a Yu Darvish or this guy or that, whatever the case may be. That's where if you're the Tigers, you want to see the Braves succeed because that's the kind of trajectory that you're hoping to be on here in a couple years, where you have your number 1 guy, your number 2 guy, your number 3 guy, but now we're going to go sign to a big free agent, a Casey Hayward or this or whatever the case may be. So that's the kind of thing that you want to see if you're a Tigers fan for sure. Give me your prediction, Mike. Who gets there? Who gets the nod? What's our World Series matchup? And who is our World Series champion in this dilapidated season?
I'm going to go Dodgers-Astros.
Okay.
Because I think that would be the best series.
Oh my gosh.
And I think
the frothing at the mouth.
Yeah, if you're into any kind of like storyline, anything, I think that's the storyline that everyone's going to want to see and everything. And I think if you want baseball ratings to have any chance to go up, I think that's the rating that you can get. And I'm going to pick the Dodgers to win because I think they're going to...
You think it's about time?
Yeah, they're just going to ball out against Astros. They're going to be like, yeah, when you don't cheat, we can beat you.
Real quick here on the Yankees, I just want to just touch on this real fast just because I like to sit in their misery. This is another year, right? They signed Garrett Cole, they got Giancarlo Stanton, they've got Aaron Judge. I mean, you got all these guys, right? And yet, once again, they're falling short of even not just the championship series, but the World Series as well. If you're the Yankees, like, is it time to maybe start thinking of a different model, or because you've got 30 World Series wins under your belt that you're just going to keep going the same way? Because clearly it's not working. Let's be real. They've choked in the playoffs a lot. As Tigers fans, the last time the Tigers were relevant, we were spanking the Yankees in 4 games. So it's like, you look at it and you go, clearly something isn't working right now. I think partially it's pitching, quite frankly, but
yeah, it's part pitching. It's also I think we see it in other sports too, is when I guess outside of basketball, but basketball is so different than anything else.
Yeah,
it's an albatross sport really. But I guess in football, when you see these like the Rams 2 years ago, when you just build in all these massive players for like a one year run, even though the Yankees can pay these people for multi-years,
right.
But when you have all these massive players on one team, usually it doesn't work very well. It's the teams that are built from the ground up that have the relationship together, and they've been working together for a long time. Like the long-term success over, okay, we're just going to pay Garrett Cole a lot of money because you're a good pitcher.
Right.
But, he doesn't work in New York as well as he did in the Astros or whatever.
Right, exactly.
It's just, it's like it happens in most sports outside of basketball, because basketball you can just build a super team and win. For the most part.
Very much so.
If you want to. But, in baseball and, football and even in hockey, you can just build up talent. But at that point, I don't think you normally win. Usually, it's the teams that are built for.
Right, it's for whatever reason it is the teams a lot of times, right? Like the big, you'll see teams like the Cubs did it. The Astros did it, where they'll go sign a guy or two, or they'll make a big trade for some guy to get them over the top. But the core of the team remains the same regardless, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the big key here, is that the Yankees, I feel like at times it's like either you have Giancarlo Stanton or you've got name like Austin Jackson on the outfield. You know what I mean? Like you've got one extreme or the other, and you don't have anything in between. You know what I mean, for that kind of thing. So just interesting to see the difference, from maybe an Oakland A's team compared to the Yankees, where the payrolls are so drastically different, and everybody else are just kind of like, meh, it is what it is, yada yada yada. So interesting enough. It's fun to keep an eye on, and it's also just funny to see all the money they spend for absolutely nothing. It's all good stuff. All right, let's jump in here. NXT Takeover 31. I'd like to say that a lot of stuff happened, but I'd be lying. So
you would be lying.
We'll go through it here. Overall thoughts on the show. No titles changed hands. I thought at least one would. I thought the Cruiserweight maybe for sure would, but nope. You got some storylines with the Ridge Holland Adam Cole thing, which completely has been thrown out the window because Ridge Holland just blew his leg up last week on NXT, so you don't really have any residuals from the show either, quite frankly. Give me your overall grade on the show before we go match by match here.
Well, I thought this was the best pure takeover of the COVID era.
Okay.
Like, I think from match to match perspective, I think it was the best. I think you can argue takeover 30 because, like you had a new North American champ, you crowned or Karrion won before he had to relinquish the NXT title. Like, stuff happened.
Yeah, McAfee was
amazing, and you didn't really expect it. So, like, you could look at that card and be like, stuff happened, and it was probably a more complete card. But I think the match quality
in ring wise
for 31, like, I think Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly, before we actually talk about it, was like absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think every second of it was great. So I think there's like match.
The problem is that I think some people look at it and you go, it was great, but like you always had the back of the mind, like, I know O'Reilly really doesn't have a shot.
Yeah, he's never going to win it, but it's just a great match to watch kind of thing.
For sure.
So, I think that for most of these matches, where I was like, probably won't change hands, but it's just a really good match to watch.
Absolutely.
So, I'm going to give it a B-.
B-? Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the fact that I just, for me, similar to AEW, and I criticized AEW for this last week, so I'll do the same thing for NXT in the sense that, like, you don't have a takeover every month. Now, apparently we're going to have one next month, or this month for Halloween Havoc, but...
no, that's going to be the TV show.
Is it a TV?
Yeah.
Oh, it is? Yeah. Oh, never mind then. But regardless, right, you're going to see these... you get a takeover once every couple months, you get an AEW pay-per-view every couple months. I need to see things progress on these shows, right? And I feel like sometimes they're just kind of thrown together and it's like, okay, cool, like this is going to be the card. And from a match quality perspective, I 100% agree with you, right? Like I thought, the first match on this card, Damian Priest Gargano, was phenomenal. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I was honestly like, oh, Gargano's got a shot at winning this thing, right? So I really enjoyed that match. However, right, when you don't have a build to it, and two, when nothing, you don't see a title change, we don't see something out of it, it just felt, it kind of feels flat, like a bad taste in your mouth at the end of it, because you're like, all right, but we could have went to next week's NXT show, not had this card, and everything's exactly the same, and I didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest problem, but I would say that, I think B- is fair, C+ for me probably, just because, like I said, I need to see things progress. We need to continue to, I don't need title change for the sake of title change, and I don't need things to be wrapped up super fast, but if you're going to continue to tell the story, but nothing's told in this regard. So, speaking of that, though, let's talk about this Damian Priest Gargano match. I think that was the first one on the card, right? Yeah. Damian Priest retains, obviously. But, this match to me I thought was fantastic. I think Gargano did exactly what he was trying to do. I think they love Damian Priest. I really do. I think he's going to be a big star for NXT. Yeah. And I think he's one of the few guys that I think can make the transition over to the main roster. He's a big dude, got an explosive arsenal. They don't force him to talk a ton. When he does, it's impactful. And I don't think like the character is anything too crazy where they would need to change it. Plus, he's kind of like that tweener babyface.
Yeah, he can roll on either
side,
if he needs to, really.
And it works. He doesn't have to do a whole lot. I think that's the big problem with Keith Lee. Is Keith Lee, in some regards, doesn't know how to be cool. I don't know what. And I'm not the biggest Keith Lee guy. I'll admit that, but like. I don't know if you felt the same thing, but I think sometimes when you make the move up to the main roster, you lose something. Like Keith Lee's biggest thing was like you can't stop him. You know what I mean? Like he's just unstoppable force. But like as soon as he got to the main roster, I don't feel that anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think Damian Priest has a character where he can do that. He can just be that super cool, like I'm gonna live forever thing, and it works.
Oh so, yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah. Wish Gargano would get called up to the main roster though. Like it's bumming me out a little bit. But
yeah, the draft is
rough. We're gonna talk about the draft here in a second, but let's continue on.
All right. So next we had Kushida beating Velveteen Dream in 13 minutes exactly. Exactly. I thought this match was fine. I didn't think anything was like stand out about it. I do like the fact that they're giving Kushida though a bit of an edge. Like he's not just like this happy to be here guy anymore. Yeah. Like he's a little more aggressive. We saw it in NXT the next week, him against Ciampa. He looked really good against Ciampa. He had an edge to him. He's more aggressive. That's, I think, what he's going to need in order to survive. Because right now his NXT run has been underwhelming, to say the very least. Yeah, I think Kushida's really dying from not having a cruiserweight, like
a true cruiserweight division.
Yeah, like a thought out, like not a New Japan, like how they have their own like division of it. Like it's just kind of mixed in with everyone else kind of right now, and you don't really know who's cruiserweight and like what show they're on and what they're doing. So, and he's not even on 205 Live. I don't think so. No, he's just an NXT guy who is a cruiserweight that could challenge for the cruiserweight title.
Or the North American, but he's not. But, like, he's in a weird spot because he never, even in New Japan, he never drifted over into the heavyweights. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you look at Finn. Finn, as junior heavyweight champion, was facing Tanahashi for the world title. Yeah. Like, Ospreay has made the full transition now, fully to heavyweight. Shingo, Saint Ibushi, all these major players in the junior division at some point have made the transition. He never did.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He was always a junior. He was never going to be that big dude. So I think he's really hurting with not having similar people like that.
Yeah. So next we had Santos Escobar beating Isaiah Scott in 15 minutes and 19 seconds.
Thought it was a fine match. A little too much interference. Thought Swerve would get the win here. I don't have a problem with Santos Escobar. I get the thing about it, but at the same time, the cruiserweight title means less than nothing right now, which is unfortunate, quite frankly.
Yeah, I actually missed this one.
Yeah.
And after I saw the result and it didn't change hands, I didn't really go back to watch it.
Right. Yeah. So it was one of those things where I thought he was going to lose it, and I'm like, all right, cool, we're going to get some new stuff.
Yeah. So we had Io Shirai beating Candice LeRae in 16 minutes and 43 seconds. And I thought this one was actually really good. Honestly, for the North American, the women's, and the world title, I think we're better here than the last two cards even.
Yeah.
I think the match quality was really good for all three of those.
I was on the edge of my seat for this match. Low-key.
I
legitimately was. Like, I thought when Candice hit her with the title, I was like, all right, cool. At least Candice is winning it tonight. This is awesome. We're going to roll on to it. And they didn't do it, which I thought kind of sucked. I was really in Candice's corner for this match. Not that I have anything wrong with Io Shirai. I'm a big Candice LeRae guy, so I'm really in that camp. So I really enjoyed this match. So perfect amount of false finishes to make you feel like everything's working. It didn't make Candice look bad in the sense that she hit the stepsister move or whatever she has. She had the win, right? Referee's out, so it's like I could have had it. So at any time they can re-interject her back into the title picture, which they're not going to right now, which is a little annoying. But I was very happy with this match.
Yeah, and to go off what happened on NXT, or actually it was right after this match, having Toni Storm and Ember Moon come back.
With Rhea Ripley still there, you got a lot of people.
Now it just added a whole bunch of people, so now Candice will probably get the back door of she's probably in the bottom of those 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
But I do see where you can kind of revisit at any time if Ember Moon is in another thing with somebody else or someone's doing a tag team thing or something. It's like, hey, we need somebody, we can have her come back. So it's
Ember Moon, I will say this though. Did you see her promo on NXT? Oh, it was terrible. Oh, so bad. She's so bad.
She's never been a promo.
She can't talk. It is bad. I was like, oh, they're letting her go, and it was rough. It was not good. It was not very good. But I will say this though. The NXT women's division is one of the best cultivated divisions that they've ever done. Like, from a depth perspective. Like, they always have somebody ready to go for the next person. You know what I mean? Like, they always have at least one lady ready to go where it's like, okay, Io beats this person, okay, now we got this person.
And the one time they just had Charlotte cash in, so they just had...
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's fine, exactly. Yeah, for a minute.
And then our main event, we had Finn Balor beat Kyle O'Reilly in 28 minutes and 30 seconds.
This is fantastic.
Which is awesome.
Fantastic. I saw Jericho made a comment where it was like, oh yeah, they just beat the crap out of each other for no purpose. I go, that's a bit extreme, I felt like, as we're watching you huff and puff against Dr. Luther in a tag match.
Yeah.
Like, maybe calm it down a little bit. But this match was fantastic. Kyle O'Reilly is a player for sure. We see that now. I'm interested to see where they go with the Undisputed Era now, especially because Ridge Holland got hurt, because that's what happened at the end. Cole was being carried and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I'm interested to see. I once again, I'm still going to say it, and I'm going to keep saying it until it happens. They need to get called up. It's the reality of the situation right now. They need to get moved up. There's nothing left for these guys to do. They've all held every title. They've done everything. Cole's got every record in the book. Roddy's got a singles and a tag run. O'Reilly had a main event. Fish and them as a tag team are one of the best in the world. There's not a lot left for Undisputed Era to do, which is unfortunate because they're probably 4 of their top 5 or 6 guys that they have on their roster right now that's not hurt, and yet, Cole's not doing anything. You really that's pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, actually, I think it does show how much deeper NXT has gotten.
Oh yeah,
because before you had you know,
you had 3 unscary era matches.
Yeah, yes, and every takeover, and now you know the only one is Kyle O'Reilly, I guess.
Honestly, you could have put Thatcher in there, and you're like, okay, there's no era on this show at all, and I don't think anybody would have been like, wow.
Yeah, so I think it shows how much deeper, and you don't even have like a Ciampa on the show either.
No Ciampa, no Cross, because he's out right now. Yeah, there was a lot of.
So there's a lot of people missing, and it still was a great card. So I think it shows the depth of what NXT has.
Yeah, I think the problem NXT has honestly is the fact that I don't think they don't have enough ammunition television-wise to compete with AEW right now.
No.
Like AEW, you know, like everyone's like, oh, AEW beat NXT against me. I go, okay, well, it's Jericho's 30th anniversary. You have a dog collar match on television. There's nothing NXT can do that's going to rival that. No. Honestly, it's just not. It is what it is.
Especially right after a takeover, you can't stockpile 2 championship matches right after a takeover or whatever. Like you're kind of just screwed with what you got.
Exactly right. You got a Fallout show compared to like a big show that you've been producing. It's just not good. So like next week too with their 1-year anniversary show. Yeah. NXT ain't touching that. It is what it is. Let's talk about this WWE Draft here real fast to end the show. I've been very underwhelmed by the WWE Draft.
Have you ever been whelmed by the WWE Draft? That wasn't like 2002's draft.
No. But I always enjoyed the ones like they did in like 07, 08, where it was like, you know, a guy from Raw, a guy from SmackDown, they fight. Okay, the winner of that gets a pick, and then it was just like a doodly 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 doodly. Oh, look at that! Oh, they picked Rey Mysterio. Oh, that's cool. Woo, all right. You know what I mean? Like I enjoyed those because I felt like then it was like, okay, you know, there was a little bit of mystery with it. You know, you didn't know who was going to get the pick. It wasn't just, oh, Raw gets 3 and SmackDown gets 2, and we're, like, going to lazily do this. And 2, it was never, like, you didn't announce people staying, I guess, was the other thing, right? Like, they never put everybody into a pool and said, okay, well, anybody's up for grabs. And like, everybody's up for grabs, but you didn't have to announce Triple H is staying on Raw. You just announced that John Cena's moving to SmackDown. It's like, you know what I mean? If that makes any sense. Like, I did not need to see a draft pick of Roman Reigns is staying on SmackDown. He's already on SmackDown. I don't need that. Same thing with Drew McIntyre. Oh, Drew McIntyre's staying on Raw. Okay, cool. I didn't, you know, that's awesome. You could have just, you know, took the champions out of it if you wanted to, or whatever the case may be, right? So
I thought they were actually going to switch them.
I did too, honestly.
And that's why when they put the pool in, I was like, all right, so
Roman's going to go to Raw.
And they're like, all right, well, we need a world champion, so Drew McIntyre's going to go to SmackDown.
Right.
And they're just going to make the Universal title red again or whatever.
Match is mine now.
Yeah, match is
I don't have to buy the new one.
Yeah, you don't have to buy the new one now.
No, like, you know, we've got, I think the 2 biggest fallouts coming from this, obviously, one, Seth going over to SmackDown. I was so pissed when they drafted Mysterio over to SmackDown, too. I was like, I really wanted this feud to end.
Yeah.
And now it's just going to go to SmackDown.
He tweeted out that he was like, I'm not going to be able to see him break up or whatever, and then he just got drafted right over. I was like, oh, so we're just gonna...
Yeah, I said, we're just gonna keep going the same
so
story. Let's just go on Fridays now. And then 2, the New Day, they win the tag titles immediately, again, which, sure. But then they break up. Big E staying on SmackDown. Kofi and Xavier going to Raw right now as of this moment. We haven't seen the Raw side of this yet. It's a 2-night draft, so we don't know if the Street Profits are moving to SmackDown now as the Raw Tag Team Champions. So right now, Raw's got both sets of tag titles on their show. But, you know, I think that's probably the other biggest thing. How are you feeling about Big E's singles run? I was not, the first time they tried this, after he was split off from Ziggler and he won the Intercontinental title, I was so not a fan of it at all. Like, I hated it, quite frankly. But I'm still not necessarily in love with it now. I've always thought Big E was a great tag team guy. I thought he was a great, you know, like, hype man kind of thing. I thought the New Day fit him really well. But him getting pushed in a major singles way like that, I don't. Maybe it's just because they only did it and it didn't really work the first time. But I'm not really catching it.
I'm okay with it, and I kind of thought the same with Kofi before Kofi won. Yeah. Like I always just looked at Kofi as a good tag team, a mid card dude, and then when he wins the title, I was like, oh wait. Maybe he is a world title. Right. It's not bad. So maybe I think Big E could grow on me with it, but I'm not like super.
Yeah, like some people are like in love with this thing. I'm like I guess I get it. He's a big dude. He's strong. He's decent in the ring. That's fine.
He
like
good stuff.
I'm just like at the same time like it's okay. You know, it's fine. Maybe it's just because they booked him with Sheamus and Sheamus is boring as all get up. But,
maybe.
What do you want to see out of Monday Night though from the draft? Like, because the Hurt Business is already on Raw, so I'm assuming Sami Zayn then stays on SmackDown because Bobby Lashley's got the U.S. title. So, Like for me personally, one thing I'm hoping that the tag titles get unified then. It's the only thing I can think of, because otherwise, like, what are they gonna do? Trade belts? Like we talked about that off air. It's like Street Profits like, hey, you got the blue ones. We're on SmackDown. You want to just swap these? Yeah. Let's just swap these.
Yeah, swap these. And then in the record book, it's like they swap titles on this day.
They were drafted, but their straps were wrong colored for the shows. They weren't color coordinated.
Yeah, they weren't color coordinated, so they had to switch them. What I'm looking forward to.
Honestly, like something like I was really happy that Miz and Morrison got drafted to Raw. Like I was happy that they moved over, because I was like, all right, cool. Like they're gonna get new stuff. We're gonna get some new stuff out of that realm. But is there something you want to see move to a different show, just to kind of refresh some things?
I would love to see Aleister Black go to SmackDown.
Yeah.
And like as a shot in the dark, because I think Aleister Black could be a really good mid-card guy.
Yeah.
And since they're not going to use him on Raw, try him on SmackDown.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the draft is. It's just like, all right, the guys that aren't working on Raw, you can just shift over into SmackDown and vice versa. And so I think guys like Aleister Black, Andrade, all those guys, like the mid-card guys that were really good in NXT, that I'm like, they could be good, at least mid-card guys, if not world title people.
Yes.
If they're not working on their brand, just shift them over.
Right.
So all of those guys,
I'd love to see Andrade get moved. Aleister Black's another one. I'm glad AJ
or
on
stay
Raw
and
now.
just do something with it.
Yeah, that would help too, right? But like, I'm glad AJ moved to Raw, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of done everything on SmackDown. He had the Intercontinental thing, like, cool. All right, let's go here. I'd like to see Daniel Bryan get moved to Raw. I think that'd be extremely interesting, right? Him with McIntyre, right? I mean, you still have AJ there. You've got Kevin Owens, as of right now, is still on Raw. Seth Rollins is gone. I think The Fiend is probably going to get drafted to Raw if I had to bet any sort of money. Because right now you've got almost no main event talent on Raw, like at all. So I think they need more of that on Raw right now. But yeah, I definitely hope the tag titles get unified though, because then we get new tag belts, and I'd be really excited about that.
Or maybe they just carry the Raw and SmackDown one around.
They did that for a minute when they did it the first time.
That's what I
was like...
But no, because what will happen is they just defend, like, if they go to SmackDown, they defend the SmackDown.
Well, because, like, the women's tag, like, that's why it was funny, like, Shayna and Nia got drafted, and like, oh, they're staying on Raw, and I go, okay, but they're the women's tag champs, so they're going to float between all three shows anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but okay. So, I don't know, that's just one thing I kind of hope to see happen, just because the tag division is just so... bleh right now. Like, the Street Profits have been tag champs for forever, and they haven't beat anybody besides Andrade and Angel Garza for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I'm hoping that Miz and Morrison going over there maybe can like rejuvenate some of that, because I still love Miz and Morrison as a tag team. I have become a bigger fan of the Miz in like the last like 2 years than I ever thought I would be. Just because I'm like, you know what? I appreciate the fact that he turns chicken salad from chicken crap every time he touches something. So I can appreciate that. So, all right, that's going to be it for this week's show. Next week, we'll prepare for more Lions and all that good stuff. We'll be talking the end of the NBA Finals, one way or the other. Either Mike's going to be super duper happy, or I'm going to laugh so hard. One of the two. More than likely, Mike will be really happy, so that will be fun. As we prepare for episode 100 coming up here, I'm really excited for it, Mike. You got anything else for this week's show? You got bullets?
Maybe Michigan football, since maybe a week out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We'll definitely preview Michigan football to start the show as well. So
State, I guess, too.
Sure. Everybody looked at us like, you guys are such homers. All right, that's going to be it for this week's show, though. For the Missing Whale Man, he's the Merc Zone. I'm the Mouth of Michigan, and we will see you guys, as always, next time.